There's a lot of things in regards of things you got to remind yourself on a daily basis. How do you do that? All these things that you write down and then just look at every day. All these reminders that you set on your phone.
Can be all of those. You can just remember to remind yourself mentally. You can write it down and create post-its and place them around your house to remind you. You can record yourself saying it and constantly listen to yourself saying it from a recording that you've done. You can write it down every day. Whatever makes the most sense to you.
Sometimes you get in you start to live life again on like autopilot, like you're trying to make a change. You got certain like mindsets that you're trying to adopt, but then you you kind of forget about it, which kind of makes you lose momentum, and then you remind yourself again like weeks later, and then you're back in that horse again. But I feel like that's a better way to go about it.
There is. Remind yourself daily, multiple times a day, until it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, keep reminding yourself until the activity itself becomes a habit. And when reminding yourself becomes a habit and the activity becomes a habit, you may not necessarily feel like you need to be reminded, but you do. So keep up those practices. Because it's not about you forgetting necessarily, it's about keeping it top of mind. Because there's a lot of things that we do on autopilot that we don't realize we're doing because it's not top of mind. So it's just keeping those things top of mind that you want to shift into, because then it's a really small chance that you'll stop doing them. Sometimes we make adjustments to our habits just to see a change in our lives. We see a change in our lives, we lose motivation, we stop exercising the habit, and then we give birth to that issue that inspired us to change all over again. So the objective is to keep pursuing greatness by keeping greatness top of mind.
What are some of the things that you practice in order to keep that on top of mind?
I practice journaling, I practice prayer, I practice having alarms on my phone, I practice listening to positive content on a daily basis, all day actually, but not all day, most of the day. I would say 75% of my day is me consuming positive content, meaning content that's going to help me get to whatever goal I may have at that time. I surround myself with positive people. And being around people that stretch me. Being around people that remind me of my blind spots. Being around people who care to see my blind spots and share them with me. And also being around people who I can bounce ideas off of. And who have experience with the things that I'm actually pursuing in some shape, form, or fashion. Or at least have the same interest. And so we can pitch a catch with each other. Meditation as well. I meditate while I work out though. So while I'm training is when I'm thinking about, like, thinking very deeply about things that I want to acquire in my life, thinking very deeply about what I'm grateful for, focusing on those things. Part of the reason why I stopped listening to music while I train. Yeah. Sometimes I write down positive affirmations and things like that. I find that doesn't really work for me so much. Lately, I've incorporated breathing exercises, morning walks. And on those walks, I remind myself, I prime myself for what it is that I want to accomplish long term, not just for that day. Just so that the vision remains very clear in my mind and that my actions throughout the day are based on moving toward that larger overall vision and not just on what the goal for today is or the list of goals for today, but what the objective is long term. I'll keep that idea fresh in my mind. And then I have, different reminders throughout the day. I have 3 alarms on my phone, for example, for that remind me to pray for very specific things. I pray when I wake up in the morning. I pray before I go to bed. And then periodically in between that, I may say an additional prayer. So yeah, there's a few things that I do.
How long do you think you can fight temptation?
For however long you're truly interested in not doing that thing. And for however long you remain the same person. That's what's going to determine how long you even have to fight it. So as you change, your desires change. So the thing that may have been very tempting for you 2 years ago, maybe a breeze for you today, because you've adjusted as a human being. But if you're the same way today as you were 2 years ago, it's going to still be tempting. And whatever tactics you were using, chances are you need to use those and more, because your ego got accustomed to those tactics. You figured out ways to get around it, so you have to create new ones consistently to maintain your discipline of not actually indulging in what you're tempted to do. Otherwise, in my experience, it doesn't work, typically. It really depends. There's no time frame attached to that specifically. Depends on the person and how strong that desire is for them.
Are there any philosophers that you specifically seek knowledge from?
Yeah. There's a lot of prominent business owners. There's people in my family. There's the common names: Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. There's the philosophers of today. Not really philosophers. Well, philosopher, yes, but that's not the title that people typically give them. Who's a philosopher today? who's not a philosopher today, rather. So yeah, I follow some people. I seek understanding and knowledge from some people. They have certain philosophies. I'm not sure if we would label them as philosophers, though. They're older men and women with a high level of wisdom. And some of them are very young men and women with a lot of audacity. I value both of those qualities in a person. So, too many of them to name.
I think it's sometimes inevitable that the fire and the passion you do something with can be dim at times.
Definitely.
There's still passion, but it's not as fiery.
Definitely.
What do you do at such times?
Keep showing up. Keep showing up. Keep protecting the fire. And don't look for passion every day. Inevitable for the fire to dim. There are going to be moments where your passion doesn't seem to be as strong as it once was. And there are also going to be moments where your passion comes back stronger than it's ever been. Despite what happens with your passion, the objective is to keep showing up. In other words, not only showing up to do the thing that you're passionate about when your passion is strongest. And then the days where it's not so strong, you don't show up. The objective is to show up, regardless of how you may be feeling about showing up that day. And showing up is not just being there physically. Showing up is actually coming and giving 120%. Showing up and providing a quality experience. Showing up and continuously providing value in every shape, form, or fashion that you can fathom. Not just literally showing up, being there physically. But also protect that flame. Try not to let it go out completely. And as long as it's lit, show up.
How important is it to understand the finances of what you're doing?
Finances are extremely important. The only thing more important than finance is passion, actually. Checking to see if you have a passion for whatever it is that you're interested in doing or seem interested in doing. After that, learn the business of it. Because without that, you're not really as interested as you may think you are. And because of that, you probably shouldn't be dedicating an extensive amount of your time to it. Because you won't get all of the benefits that come along with it. You'll have a very partial experience. And at some point, that doesn't make sense for your life. And the people who are in it, that care about you, for the people that you supposedly care about. For example, if you have a family, you like video games. But aside from having a peace of mind and distracting yourself from real life, video games don't actually provide any real value for you. And at what point does distracting yourself from reality stop helping you? Maybe as a child that helped. But as you age, life becomes more and more dynamic. So perhaps distracting yourself from what's real doesn't actually serve you anymore. Unless it does. Unless you can find a way to get paid from it. Handsomely. $1,000 a week, $1,000 a month. What handsomely means depends on the person and what kind of life that they want to live. And just understand the implications that come along with that lifestyle that you want to live. $1,000 a week is not much money. It's only $52,000 a year. That's not much. Depending on where you live and the quality of life that you want to live. So, you're making $52,000 a year in New York City. Probably gonna have a rough time. Or any popular city for that matter. You're probably gonna have a rough time. If you're making $52,000 in a city that may not be so popular, meaning it's a city that has less of a demand and a whole lot of supply, then maybe $52,000 will provide sufficient resources for you to live the life that you want to live. So, to be paid handsomely depends on the person and what kind of life they want to live. But if you want to live in New York, if you want to live in DC, if you want to live in Atlanta, if you want to live in Miami, if you want to live in any of these places, Jersey, really anywhere in Jersey, other than the hood, and even in the hood, $52,000 is not a year. It's not a lot of money. And if you want to secure your future in some way, because organizations are not really focused on securing the future of their employees so much anymore. Meaning there's no pension or retirement plan. A lot of organizations are not even offering 401ks anymore. So it's pretty much do it yourself. $52,000 a year. It's probably not going to allow you to invest very much. So it's not only about now, because the sooner you begin to invest, the more money you accumulate for later. And if people are actually going to begin to live a very long time, yet companies are not interested in actually developing any type of pension retirement plan for them, and the powers that be in the world continuously shift, what does your life look like 30, 40 years from now? Even though you might be passionate about this thing, will this thing even exist 20 years from now? It's a very real thing. And typically something that a lot of young adults don't ask themselves. Because when you're young, you think you have time. You're arrogant enough to believe you have time. And to some extent you do. But what doesn't really happen oftentimes is you don't really have the wisdom of understanding how fast time is going to move. Because you don't have very far to look back at. If you're 40, you have some time to look back at and notice, okay, when I was between the ages of 5 and 12, it seemed like a day lasted forever. A day was like a week. In your teens, it seemed to somehow get shorter. After college, a day was like this. In your 30s, it's like half a day. It's like lunchtime, dinner, like almost immediately, like it's like 1 hour difference. That's what it feels like in a lot of instances. So how do you keep pace with what's happening in your life? It's not just about right now. It's not just about next year or the next 5 years. What does your life look like long term, and how are you setting yourself up for that now? And it's not okay not to know the answer to that at a certain age in your life. 21, you probably don't know the answer to that. Maybe even 25, you don't have an idea. But somewhere around there, you might want to start getting serious. Because before you know it, you'll be 30. And people are really expecting you to have the answer by that time. The people that I'm talking about are not other people. It's the child in you. It's the 21-year-old version of you that had this big dream of who you were going to be by the time you were 30. Did you actually become that? It's the 25-year-old version of you that believed in you, but you're not actually doing anything that you said you would do. So does the 30-year-old still believe in you? What are you doing today that the 40-year-old version of you is going to be proud of, that's going to say thank you for? What is the 70-year-old looking at you thinking? Are you taking care of that 70-year-old? As much as it seems as if we're living longer, the world around us is changing, and it's changing in a way that seemingly requires us to grow up faster. Are you growing up? Or are you just getting older? It's always important to understand the finances. It's always important to understand the business. Otherwise, perhaps you just have like a childlike interest in what you're doing. And to some extent, that's good. That childlike curiosity keeps your imagination going. It keeps the playfulness attached to whatever it is that you're doing. But as you age, the other things have to validate that playfulness. The business has to validate that playfulness, has to validate you entertaining that curiosity. And for that reason, it's no longer childish, it's fulfilling. But if you don't have those things, if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have that backing, if you don't have the understanding, if you don't have something that's going to hold this up and create a solid infrastructure for this, then it's childish. And the objective as you age is to put the childish things away, because you're no longer a child. Business is not for children. It's for adults. So as you become an adult, adopt an understanding of business. It's very important. What is the best way to go about implementing something that you've learned immediately? Immediately. And immediate is not necessarily like right now in this moment. Immediate can be 72 hours, having a 72-hour rule. If I learn something within 72 hours, I'm going to figure out how to actually implement this in some shape, form, or fashion. How are you going to make sure you do that? You schedule it immediately, or you do something toward it immediately. So that may be confusing. So essentially, if I'm learning something new, the instant I learn it and I understand what it's saying, I'm writing it down. I'm writing it out. What did I just learn? And thinking about in which way can I implement this into my life. I write that out. Once I have a clear understanding as to how I can implement this new thing that I now understand into my life, I think of how I can do that immediately, and I understand how I can do that immediately. I apply it within the next 72 hours. I schedule it. And I have reminders that I've scheduled to do this thing. I've scheduled to implement this thing into my life. But I don't only schedule to do it one time. Okay, I learned this new thing. I immediately take action by writing it out. I immediately take action with thinking about how well do I understand it. I immediately take action with thinking about how I can implement it into my life. I immediately take action in thinking about how I can schedule it and actually go about scheduling it. And having reminders that I've scheduled it and etc. But it's also schedule it repeatedly, not only within the first 72 hours. So you say something to me for right now, for example. I think that is profound. I write it out. I think about how I can apply it to my life. I schedule that I'm going to apply it tomorrow at 2 o'clock in this way. But I schedule that I'm going to do that not only tomorrow in that way at 2 o'clock. Based on what it is, I schedule it the next day at 2 o'clock as well. The next day at 2 o'clock as well. Next week, Tuesday at 2 o'clock as well. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 o'clock as well. Right? It's not just scheduling it for that one time, the first time. It's how do I really implement this into my life? You doing something one time is not something that's truly implemented into your life. Something being implemented into your life is something that you do habitually, something that you do over and over, something that really brings you value, so you see the need to continuously do it again and again. That's implementing something into your life. So when I'm saying schedule it and have a 72-hour rule as to when you schedule it and when you actually do it for the first time, that's just doing it for the first time within 72 hours. That's not only doing it that one time within the first 72 hours. Depending on what it is, the time frames will change, of course.
I think that's very helpful for, in general, especially for someone like me who's like doing a lot of research, like on production. I'm like, oh, this fight is like, this dope. I'm gonna use this, and then I end up never using it.
Exactly.
And I have like thousands of hours on material that I watched.
Exactly. But if you're not focused on the thing that you're quote unquote learning or paying attention to, or you're not can really be focused and not paying attention to something that you're giving your time to. If you're not focused, you're not present. If you're not present, you're not learning anything. You're just there. It's like going to class every day. There's a bunch of people who go to class every day and don't learn anything in class. They're physically there, but they're not mentally and emotionally present. So none of the information actually sticks. You want to be present. You want to be focused. And you want to make sure that you get a reward from that focus. And that comes from implementing it. Oftentimes we mistake movement for progress. What's movement? In this context, movement is thinking that you're learning something or constantly being on the quest for more information. Today, we have so many people that are constantly on a quest for more information, but they don't apply anything. They feel like they've done something because they watched another video and another video. They read another book. They watched another video. They think that is doing something, but it really isn't. That's the prerequisite to do something. That's not actually doing something, though. So it's okay that you read the book. It's okay that you watched the video. That's amazing, actually. That's great preparation for the first step. That's not the first step. That's not the first step in executing. You're still within the realm of learning there. There's steps in regard to learning. First step is realizing you need to learn something. Right? Second step is actually going to your computer, going to YouTube, going to Google, going to whatever source of information. studying it, understanding it, reviewing it, practicing it, making sure that you get it. All of that is part of the learning process. Now that you've learned it, you've gone throughout the process of learning, but that's not executing. Now you have to actually apply it. And that's the part that a lot of people miss today. A lot of people think that because they've taken all of these steps to learn it, that they've actually done something. They haven't done it. They haven't really done anything. And so nothing really happens in their lives. Nothing changes, at least not in the way that they think it would from learning this information, because they're not applying it. Once you don't use, you lose. So eventually you forget about it in most instances. Unless it's something that's really important to you. For example, I remember a lot of things about animals because that's important to me. There was a time I wanted to be a wildlife vet. I didn't actually become a wildlife vet, but because there was an emotional attachment to the information that I was learning, it stuck with me. So there may be some information that sticks with you even though you don't use it. Right? Some of that information I've lost studying engineering in school. Right? A lot of that information I thought I lost until I'm having conversations with engineers and we're speaking about theories. And then it comes back. Right? So depending on the emotion that you attach to it, chances are it's going to be easier for you to remember it. So in that way, you may not lose it. But there's a lot of information that people are consuming that they don't have any emotional attachment to. For example, entrepreneurship. There are a lot of people who feel forced to be entrepreneurs today. They feel like they have to be an entrepreneur because entrepreneurship is the wave, even though there's very little about them that says they're entrepreneurs. And outside of learning, by watching a multitude of videos and reading a bunch of books, there's very little that says they're actually interested in becoming an entrepreneur. So, not very much of it sticks. There's just a lot of research. But it doesn't really mean anything. They don't really care about it.
How do you, because I read this too in Awaken the Giant Within, how do you attach an emotion to something?
You don't. You don't consciously attach an emotion to something. You either have an emotion about it or you don't. You can't force yourself to care about something you don't really care about. Maybe there's something in it that you care about. Oftentimes that's the reason why it sticks. For example, entrepreneurship. Some people don't really care about entrepreneurship, but they really care about taking care of their families, and they may have a large family, and they realize that they're not going to do this at a 9 to 5. That's what makes them an entrepreneur. Not because they love the game. They don't really love the game. They play the game in the beginning because they feel like they have to play the game in order to show up for their families. They become successful because there's no other option in their mind other than success because they want to take care of their families. They maintain success because once they see the benefit of entrepreneurship, they want to continue it. Over time, they fall in love with it. Why? Because people tend to like what they're good at. They got good at it because they put the hours in. They put the hours in because they love their family. So now it seems like, wow, this person is just, they're just born for this. When in all actuality, they weren't. On a spiritual level, yes, they were. But in the physical realm, they practiced. Was it entrepreneurship that they really cared for? Maybe now they care for it because they see the fruits of their labor. They see the greatness that can come from it. And their appreciation gives them a deep love for it. But the love for their family is what drove it all. They really care for their family, not entrepreneurship. They can do that with some other things. Doesn't always have to be entrepreneurship, of course. But it's finding something that gives you a reason to care about this other thing that can bring about a reality that is positive, that can improve your current circumstances. Maybe it's not the thing itself, but it's the meaning that you gave to the thing, based on the inspiration that you have for that meaning. Entrepreneurship means freedom. The inspiration for freedom financial freedom is to spend time with my family and do it in a way where we are actually happy. And we're happy because we're no longer in survival mode, because we actually have the resources that we need to live life out loud as who we really are, not who someone else wants us to be, because we have to save face so that they give us a check every month or every 2 weeks. Where we can really live life the way that it was intended to be, which is as our true selves. Although you may not be able to force an emotion about this thing specifically, you can think about the different aspects of this specific thing and think about how can you indulge in that activity because you love or care or are passionate about something else that is somehow connected to it.
How do you brand yourself in a way that showcases your capabilities, but still has people curious about what else you can do?
Spoon feed your capability to people. You create a brand where people are aware of what you bring to the table, but still curious about what you can do by spoon feeding information to people. Because there's not enough time in the day for you to tell them everything that you know anyway. But also, you don't know enough. So the objective for you should also be to keep learning and not be afraid to give as much as you possibly can, even though there's no way you can give as much as you know in 1 hour. Even if you think you can, chances are you can give the overview in an hour. It's like studying a course. It's like going to college and you have 4 months to learn about accounting. You can get an overview of accounting in an hour. But you won't really understand any of the details about it. And 2, don't try to control other people's interests. If they're not interested, they're not interested. You want to be respectful of how people think. You want to be understanding of their circumstances. But not necessarily trying to keep them interested in something that they're not really interested in. Yeah, there's some science behind it, like Instagram, like scrolling, and etc. But as you can see, there are different things on Instagram all the time. And you get to choose what you're interested in. Social media is not necessarily a negative thing, because you get to choose what you
what you give your attention to. You can be very intentional when you go on social media. The algorithm is going to feed you what you seem to care about. If I'm on social media and all I look at is self-help, then I'm probably not going to see naked women or naked men or half naked men, half naked women. I'm probably not going to see people smoking and drinking and at the club and partying. And probably not going to see that. So, be yourself. Because there's abundance there, there's substance there. The rest of it is not self-sustainable in most instances.
Why do you think that many people have such trouble being themselves, which should be like the easiest thing, right?
No. Because you don't know yourself. Being yourself is challenging because you don't know yourself. As we go through our life, it's really just a journey back to self. Because you go away from yourself. And a lot of times we don't realize that. We don't realize it's a journey back to self. We don't realize we moved away from ourselves. But oftentimes there's not a realization of self to begin with and thinking, the importance of thinking. Thinking about what you're doing. Somebody's like, oh, we out to the club. You're like, all right, because that's your friend. And you want to spend time with them. It's like, why are you going to the club to spend time with them? Oh, that was just what we were doing. It was just a vibe. People love to say that. It was a vibe. That's the vibe. What are you doing, though? What are you doing? What's your vibe? Not the vibe. What's your vibe? What are you on? It's hard to know yourself in a society that's distracting you from yourself and wanting you to be everything other than yourself because it rewards that. It rewards you falling in line. It doesn't reward you being an individual unless you can be an individual over a sustained period of time. So you have to prove that this is really who you are. And the sacrifices that come along with that are sacrifices that a lot of people don't seem to be able to maintain the stomach for. It's why people have these sayings where success is lonely at the top. It's all of these sayings that comes from not following the pack. Not following the herd. It can be very challenging to know yourself. And because of that, it's a conscious effort.
Can you really know yourself?
You can know yourself, yes, because you can know your character. That doesn't mean that your personal reality doesn't change. You can know that you're not a liar. That doesn't mean you're going to always live in the same place that you live in. Your personal reality changes, even though you know who you are, without changing your character. Because your belief is based on the information at your disposal. Your character is what you believe to be right or wrong from your spirit. That's what sustains it. Because chances are what you believed in at 17, you probably don't believe in a lot of those things at 47. That doesn't mean your character has changed. That girl that you thought was cute and everything in the world to you at 17, maybe she's not at 47. Because the things you believe in at 47 are different from the things you believe in at 17. But your character hasn't shifted. I don't believe that I should continue to put sex on a pedestal. I'm still not a liar, though. I wasn't a liar when I thought I should put sex on a pedestal. But lying is not a part of my character. But now, because I no longer put sex on a pedestal, my personal reality is different. Because I no longer prioritize sex. Excuse me. Seems like I can't drink enough water.
Oh, same.
So your personal reality can change without your character changing. Your personal reality changes because your beliefs change. But your character is still intact. So yes, you can know yourself. As much as you change and stay the same. So you are changing. But oftentimes when we say we're changing our personal reality. And even if your morals change, morals are a belief. I believe in this because, etc.
You said character is what you believe is right or wrong. What else defines character?
What you believe is right or wrong. That's a belief. That determines your personality. It's not your character. Your personal reality is based on your beliefs. You're not who you are because you believe you should be that way. There's a lot of people who lie, know they shouldn't lie, believe that people should not lie, but they still lie. Society would say, the medical profession would probably say that's a sickness. That's some type of disease. That can be debated. Character is who you are. Your personality is what you are. Your beliefs justify your personality. Your character justify your beliefs. I do something to you, you get angry about it. Question you can ask yourself is, what must I believe to be angry about this? You probably believe that because a certain thing happened in your life prior. Or maybe somebody gave you a philosophy and you never really questioned it. Right? That is where your belief, that's where you can begin to figure out why you believe something. But your character is what's going to justify that belief. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that it tells you that the belief is right. but it gives you insight as to why you followed that belief. And it depends on the belief. Does that not make sense?
Can you say that one more time?
Okay. Your character justifies your beliefs. Your beliefs justify your personality. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's not too clear for me still. Like,
Okay. Your personality is another word for your personal reality. Right? Your personal reality is based on your beliefs. Sex is on a pedestal to you. You believe sex should be number one in life. So your actions in life support that. It supports the fact that you believe sex is so important. Because you believe sex is so important, because you put sex on a pedestal, because sex is the number one thing that's top of mind for you, you're constantly pursuing sex. You have a lifestyle around sex. That's your personal reality. Every 2 hours you having sex. That's your personal reality. For someone who doesn't care about that, they're doing something else with their time. Their personal reality is different. Does that make sense? Okay. That personal reality came from your belief. Your belief was that sex is very important. So you built your life around it. You built your personal reality around it. Right? What does this say about your character, though? Now we have to check your belief before we start talking about your character. Where did this belief come from? Right? If this is my personal reality when I'm having sex all day, what must I believe in order for this to be my personal reality? I believe that sex is number one. Was that given to me? Was that belief given to me that sex is number one? Or did I establish that thought process for myself based on something that I seen that was appealing to me? Maybe I didn't really want sex. Maybe I really wanted significance. Maybe I really wanted love. Right? This is the way that I saw to do that. This is the way that seemingly resonated with me the most because people seem to be extremely passionate and emotional about this. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that type of connection with other people. This yearning for that connection is what created this, is what lended itself well for me to have this belief, for me to adopt this belief that sex was number one because that was how you became significant. That was how you received love. Because you had to be significant. You had to be valuable enough for this person in order for this person to justify loving you. And the way I received that love from other people, and the way that I can understand and the way that I interpret is through sex. Does that make sense?
yeah. So one more time, the order is personal reality. That's the last.
Character justifies your beliefs justify your personality. That's not a one-to-one relationship, though. That's what I was trying to display just now. Right? It's something about this that leads to something about that. And something about that leads to something about these things. These things represent your personal reality. And that's why the idea or the idea of self and the quest to discover self is complicated because it's not a one-to-one relationship in a way that's so clear. You have to dig, you have to wrestle with yourself in order to understand these things. It doesn't typically come. You don't typically come to an understanding so quickly because it's not so simple. Because it's not this thing leads to this thing that leads to this thing. high level it is. Character justifies your beliefs, but how is this one belief justified by my character? For example, sex. What about my character justifies this? What is it? I'm a sexual person? That's not my character. That's my reality. What about my character lends itself well to me being a sexual person? There's something about my character that lends itself well to a specific belief that creates justification for me being a sexual person. But what is it? In this instance, my reality is I'm a sexual person. My belief is that sex should be number one. Why should sex be number one? Because I'm interested in significance. Why are you interested in significance? Because I'm interested in love. Well, who are you though? That's the character part. That's the part to figure out. If being who you are doesn't feel good to you, then perhaps a reform or reframe of your belief is necessary. Because if what's natural is a problem and you would rather something fabricated, then obviously you're not aligned with yourself somewhere. Perhaps you're more aligned with society than you are with yourself. And perhaps you think that's more important. Perhaps you think it's more important to be aligned with society than you are with yourself. And for that reason, you care more about what society thinks of you and how society treats you, which is not really you. It's a persona. It's just how society treats the person that you've created, not the person that you actually are. But you care about how society treats that person more than you care about how society treats who you really are. And typically that's just an environmental issue. If you change your environment, chances are you can change or reframe the belief attached to not having an interest in being who you really are. Because this one environment may not celebrate it, but another environment will. The question is, are you interested in making that sacrifice? Because you have to give up everything that you know, everything that is of this environment, to really, or at least be willing to really indulge in another environment that is truly different, and thus may truly value who you are for who you really are, rather than having you value someone else because who you really are is seemingly not valuable. For example, there are a lot of people in prison right now because they were trying to be gangsters. Wasn't really who they were, but they were trying to be accepted. They were really young. They were very susceptible to peer pressure. They made a mistake. That mistake costed them their freedom. Wasn't really who they were. But they thought they had to be that way because that's what was celebrated, that's what was valued in society. There's people that didn't really care to sell drugs. That was the drug dealer was the one that was deemed valuable. It doesn't only happen with quote unquote negative pursuits. You got some people that are not really entrepreneurs, they hate entrepreneurship. But they come from a lineage of entrepreneurs. You have people that don't want to be lawyers, but everybody in the family was a lawyer.
They make a great living. They work for a great firm. They have a very prominent last name, at least within their community. But they really wanted to be something else. They really wanted to be a teacher. They really wanted to be a dancer. So it's important to really find an environment that serves you, the real you. It's even more important to go on a quest to figure out who the real you is. What the real you is can change. That's your personal reality. As long as in some shape, form, or fashion, it remains a true extension of who you are, which to some degree is inescapable, honestly. Because who you are is always really going to find a way to shine through in some capacity, whether it be in private or in public. So that person who's a lawyer may be a lawyer, that may be their 9 to 5. But for as long as you've known them, they've been taking dance classes. They go out every weekend just so they can dance. They never really talk about law to their friends or anyone else. They're always talking about dance. They're always going to the theater to see someone dance. So it does shine through, even though the person may be running from it for whatever reason.
You think there's dangers to being surrounded with only people that share your beliefs and views?
There's definitely a danger of being surrounded by people who share your thoughts and views, who only share your thoughts and views. For sure. But how likely is that? We may have the same dominant thoughts. That's what you want. The chance of someone thinking exactly what you think in every aspect of life, slim to none. So I don't really think that's something people should be concerning themselves with. You want to be around someone who shares the dominant thoughts that you have, especially if they're positive.
How do you deal with heartbreak in a healthy manner? And this does not only have to be from a romantic situation, this also can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you deal with heartbreak in a healthy manner? Then keeping very close tabs on your destructive habits. Because heartbreak is oftentimes an excuse for people to do the things that they know they shouldn't be doing, but the things that they know feel good. And heartbreak doesn't feel good, and typically people are looking for an escape. So they drift back into practicing the habits that they know don't actually serve them for what they want in their lives long term, but it serves them for the feeling that they want to have right now. So I would say be conscious of those habits that you used to have, and don't allow yourself to drift back into actually exercising those habits by leaning deeper or further into the positive habits that you have. Think about why this instance or this circumstance was heartbreaking. What did you do? And that may be counterintuitive because you're trying to feel better. So if you're thinking about what did you do that could have created this circumstance, it would make you feel worse. I understand that. But that's the only way that you can keep it from happening, potentially keep it from happening again in the future. By understanding the part that you can control and controlling that part. So looking at it as a lesson. That's mental, by the way. That doesn't change the emotion that you feel. So I would say provide space for the emotion. It's cool. We can rationalize it and make it make sense to us mentally, but we also have to make space for the emotion. And so I would say allocate time for yourself, away from everything else, away from friends, away from family. Time to do nothing. Time to grieve about whatever loss you experience. But also time to understand the shift, because oftentimes heartbreak is traumatic, and traumatic experiences break our rhythm. So it's actually an opportunity for us to regain focus on who we really want to be and start gearing our lives toward that goal of becoming that person. Which is why I say lean more into the positive habits. But perhaps, though, your concept of positive is going to change because of this break in your habits. This disruption to your subconscious that now allows a window of opportunity for you to do things differently. And oftentimes, heartbreak, it provides a long window of opportunity for you to do things differently. Almost as if it's not giving you a choice. You have to do things differently. Because life changes in an instant. In some instances, yeah, there are baby steps and you're inching your way toward a shift. You're inching your way toward doing things differently. That's when you're consciously trying to make the shift in a lot of instances. But when life decides it wants to make the shift for you, that happens instantly. So the objective is to understand that there's something positive to be taken from this experience. And that's getting to know yourself better. Understanding how you contribute to the situation, both mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially. That's not both. That's a multitude of things. How did you contribute to this? What was happening on a subconscious level that contributed to this? What habits were you exercising on a day-to-day basis that contributed to this? What was the perspective that led to this? For example, some people think they have all the time in the world. They have a relationship with a woman or with a man, and they think, no, I'm not really doing what I really should be doing right now. On a scale from 1 to 10, our relationship is like a 7. I should be trying to make it a 9, 9.5, but we got some time. Until they break up. And the person is very serious about moving forward and moving in a different direction with their lives. And realize they don't have time. Thinking you have time at the organization before you really show up and do everything that you possibly can until the organization says we're going in a different direction because of COVID, which is something that no one saw coming. And now you notice that they kept those people that showed up every day and gave 120%. You showed up every day and gave 70%, which worked then, but it doesn't work now. And now you're looking for new opportunities But because of this black swan, it's harder to find it. You should have been saving money, you didn't. Because you thought you had time. And now it's a ripple effect. It happens with some people in their health. They thought they had time to get healthy. They thought they had time to eat right. They thought they had time to go to bed at a certain time. They thought they had time to stop staying out all night. They thought they had time to learn how to deal with stress, learn how to process information so that it doesn't create so much stress in their lives. They thought they had time to go to therapy. Until cancer showed up. They thought maybe if it did show up, I would have time. But by the time they found out about it, it was stage 4 breast cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, stage 4 prostate cancer. They thought they had time. A lot of times we break our own hearts. We don't realize it. We don't realize that we're doing it because failure doesn't happen quickly. In most instances, failure doesn't happen as soon as you do the first wrong thing. Failure is slow. Failure is years and years of doing that thing that you shouldn't have done. And then you fail. By that time, it's become a habit. By that time, it's programmed and crystallized into your subconscious until the failure happens and the consequence, the trauma, provides this disruption. It breaks your rhythm. And because most of the time we break our own hearts, it's important to pay attention to our actions consistently. Because again, life is always asking you to change. Every day life is asking you to change because every day you're getting older. Every day you are changing. It's like age. You may not see it every day, but in 10 years you'll see it. That's how failure is. So if you want to keep yourself young, you want to do everything that you can every day to do that. If you want to keep yourself from failing or experiencing heartbreak, you want to do everything every day that you possibly can to do so. Because every day that you show up as less than 100% of yourself, in a small way, you're creating another fracture in your heart. That chances are creates a big failure in the future that will be a very heartbreaking experience for you. So show up. Show up every day. The best way to deal with heartbreak is to put yourself in position and never have to deal with it to the best of your abilities. It's like willpower. How do you exercise great willpower? Put yourself in a position not to have to. Don't surround yourself with things that tempt you to do the wrong thing. Things that tempt you to do things that don't serve your life. That's why having good habits are important. That's why having incantations, that's why doing things to create new habits, that's why really showing up for yourself in your life is important. So you don't have these moments, because time is limited. And you want to get the best out of this experience called life. And that's about what you have to give, not about what you receive from others. It's about what you give, because that's the only experience you have. You know love when you feel love for someone else, not from someone else. Because you never really get to experience the love that they have for you, because you never get to experience them. You get to experience yourself in their presence, but you never get to experience them, so you don't really feel the love that they have for you. They feel it, and they want to give it to you. But it exists within them, so they always feel it more than you do. They always feel it differently than you do. Love comes from you. The love that you feel is the love that you have for other people. That's the love that you can really experience, because it's born within you. It lives within you. What about the love for yourself? That's what's going to determine how you handle heartbreak.